What's up, RadLads? It's Rad, and I'm here to react to the extended video for the Fallout Bakersfield project. I wasn't able to react to their first trailer drop, which garnered so much attention and praise, rightfully so I thought this would be a good way to let you know my thoughts. So let's take a look at this extended video and see what's new. Looks so good. So we saw this in the original trailer, but this is a longer view where we get to see a little bit more of Necropolis, or Bakersfield, I guess as they're calling it, and seeing that reload animation. That is one of the things that I think most people heaped a lot of praise on, were the reloading and attack animations. They look period correct. They look like they should in this type of video game, but they also look really nice. They're smooth, they look great. There is just a lot of stuff I could say about this. And I have to say, Necropolis is looking really, really good. Like here on the left, there is a tanker truck, which is just one of the world objects that you can see in the first Fallout and in Fallout 2. And they recreated that thing basically perfect. That is very impressive. Okay, that computer's pretty interesting. That looks like something I grew up using in the 90s or maybe even the early 2000s. But I think it goes without saying that this is heavily inspired by Doom or the early Wolfenstein video games, the way that this is set up, first-person view, the bar at the bottom, especially displaying the face, which we will see will take damage and he'll bleed and he'll look all beat up over time. But it all really works. It all synthesizes really well, actually a lot better than I even would have thought. So I'd be really interested to know if this is an actual 3D game or if this is that 2.5D or whatever they call Doom and Wolfenstein, where it wasn't quite 3D, but they're able to make it look like that. Oh man, that is excessive. I'm really glad they included a ghoul just vomiting right there. That's really nice. But that's another thing to point out. All the animations, they just look really good. Yes, they're trying to mimic that 90s aesthetic. The textures, they're not great. You can see the pixels, all these things, but that's exactly what they're going for. And look, you can even see like the shadowing here, right? With this pipe that goes up. You can see the individual pixels, but that's on purpose. They want to do that because they're evoking a feeling of a certain era and time, which Fallout, at least the first two, they're really from. They're from that era, and they've done it so well meshing that with the nicer animations and everything. It doesn't feel out of place. It doesn't feel like they're forcing something that shouldn't be there. So I love this. Use iguana on a stick, so it looks like when the enemies perform an action that can't really be seen, that we get a little bark or pop up like in the earlier Fallouts. And so that's a ghoul that's eating an iguana on a stick to boost health, I am guessing. I do have to say, the reload on this pistol is monstrous, but that's probably how it would be if that cylinder can't pop out. Now that is a very cool part that we saw that in the original trailer as well, being able to take a melee weapon, a knife in this case, and throw it as a ranged weapon. That's pretty cool. I wonder how many melee weapons can be used in such a way, but I think that's a great idea. I like this variation right here in ghouls. We see some long hair, maybe some dreads or something like that. They're not all bald, they're not all the same model, so that's really great to see. Now this is really interesting. We see the % hit chance for the aimed shot mechanic that was in the earlier Fallouts, and it doesn't really seem, I can't exactly tell what the nuance is here with this. If there's a toggle, so I see aim right here is on. Maybe that is the toggle. Let's see if we go back a little bit. Okay, it's off here when we don't see it. So it looks like it is a toggle and some sort of aim assist. Probably not too dissimilar to what we see in Fallout 76, where they changed VATS in real time to show you a rapidly changing sometimes, but real-time hit chance that you can take advantage of and just pull the trigger whenever you wanted to. I see we also have a meter down in the right for a reload. Okay, so that was the throwing knife from the earlier games. So it looks like maybe you won't be able to throw many or any of the other melee weapons, but that specific one, throwing knife, that makes sense that you could throw that. So that's another thing that I feel like you kind of have to have if you're reimagining the first Fallouts. They always had these really dramatic, pretty graphic death animations, and that was very similar to the one that you'd get if you had an automatic weapon and you scored a critical death hit on an enemy. The way they kind of go back and forth. The head popping up and the blood spurting out. That was a pretty good effect. And of course we got the blades razors in the back. It's a good touch. Now I think this is interesting because I don't recall any sort of gate or anything in game that says Bakersfield. My understanding is that Bakersfield is only mentioned by an NPC, and when you look at the real world location of Bakersfield and compare it to Necropolis, it absolutely doesn't line up. So it seems like maybe at an earlier point in time, Bakersfield was intended to be Necropolis, and then it was changed, likely for gameplay reasons or balancing or something like that, but they never went back and fixed that dialogue. And, well, now we've got a big old gate right here that just says it. I also like that they added these large, I don't know if they're necessarily Art Deco, but these large faces, these sculptures, these stylized faces, which in the first Fallouts, they were in a lot of places. They were a part of the aesthetic, of the architecture, even on the Enclave oil rig. So think of an oil rig. You're not really pimping those things out. You're not really decorating those. So the Enclave going and building their base on that oil rig, that Poseidon station, they purposefully chose to put those big old faces on the corners of the oil rig. That's how important it is to them. And this just looks so good with the clouds and the thunder, the fog that you see on the ground, the debris blowing away in the wind, some glass falling out of that lamp. This all just looks so good. Okay, we saw items that you can pick up are apparently very similar to Doom and some of those early boomer shooters where they're sitting on the ground and they're kind of spinning in this quasi 3D motion. All the ghouls are like, remember when we had skin? Okay, that was also cool too. We saw that in the trailer when he accesses a fridge, which I think we might see here early a little bit. The icons for actions are the same as in the first Fallouts. So it looks like when we are wanting to interact with the world, that is how they intend to have it look. You look at an object and the things that you can do become visible through an icon, and then we can choose how to interact with said object. So yeah, that makes sense given what this first person perspective that we have. Yep, so there's the hand. We open it up. We're able to see a Pip-Boy-esque type menu. Take all. Is that just graffiti? Or is that a hotkey that you can do to take everything? Not quite sure. I do want to see real quick. I'm pretty sure it was a iguana on a stick and some ammo. Yep. Some shotgun shells and iguana on a stick. Again, it all just ties in really nicely with what we know from Fallout. There's a shotgun circling. Oh, man. A Vault-Tec fridge. Kind of looked like. Nuka-Cola. Now, I thought this was really interesting. The Children of the Cathedral. And, wow, they look pretty freaky. I mean, they look pretty creepy, I would say, in the first Fallout. This looks downright scary, but they do have the trifoil symbols, which are plastered all around the cathedral. It is a symbol that they use a lot. And then you have, I forget what it's called, the icon that you can actually pick up in-game, and it's hanging right there. There's two of them, right here and right here. Oh, Power Fist. And man, that just... like, look at that. That just looks so good. Seriously, bravo. Bravo to the people that put this together and put the time and effort into making the animations and everything just look like that. It looks so good. So got a med kit, bunch of dead mole rats. Oh, there's one that's alive apparently. And we're going into the vault that is underneath the city. Come here. So that is interesting that we can use our plasma pistol, maybe even a plasma rifle, to switch to an alternate firing method that does area of effect damage. Really cool. Also, that first shot kind of looked like a critical hit when you would shoot them with a plasma weapon and they would kind of melt a little bit. They kind of fall back and melt. Flamer. Okay, that's pretty good. Those are some pretty good animations. Walking around on fire. Okay, so this looks like the motion detector. Yeah, motion detector. I kind of wonder how that is going to kind of factor into this kind of gameplay. Obviously, it looks like we get a slightly bigger overview of the map. So maybe that'll help spotting enemies. Or maybe they've even integrated it to help find quest objects and stuff like that. Like, that screen isn't that big, so it's hard to know if it's truly that useful, right? It's not a mini map. You can kind of see a little bit around where you were, but cool nonetheless. Yep, so we had the observe action. We had... oh, so there was our mini map. So it looks like there's some blocking involved with melee, or maybe that's just a miss, right? I don't know what percentage chance there is with this combat. Obviously, in the first Fallouts, chance was a huge part of it. It was heavily inspired by D&D, so having these rolls that determine how much damage you do, or if you miss entirely, or if you have a critical hit, I wonder how much that is going to factor into this. Because that gets a little difficult to do sometimes when you have this real-time first-person perspective. Because if you shoot and you're aiming, you want that shot to go where you're aiming. Throwing rocks. Now, I find it interesting that he's kind of surrounded. Okay, oh yeah, that's a vault suit. So I find it interesting that he's kind of surrounded by other ghouls, and sometimes he can attack one, and the others don't seem to care or mind a whole lot. Not sure what that's about. Now look below, look at the character model, the face. It is just super bloody and beat up. It looks really good. I think that is a really great touch. And I know, again, we're pulling from Doom and Wolfenstein, but it looks great. So we're taking a ton of damage. So I see also a lot of walking. I wonder if there's running. I kind of doubt it. So one thing about some of these old boomer shooters is there wasn't running, but your movement speed was quite quick. Like, you were fast. It's almost like you were running always and you just didn't walk. But so far, I think we've only seen him walk, and it's been rather slow, right? And another thing I guess I haven't really brought up, in the bottom left, we get a little display that tells us what's happening. We can see how much damage we're doing, how many hit points there are, what exactly is happening. And that obviously is directly from the first two Fallouts. And there it was, I would say, quite critical to have, because there was a good amount of things that would happen around you, and it wasn't always clear what exactly had happened. And so being able to glance down and see, oh, I critically missed, or oh, I injured myself and dropped my weapon, and that's why I don't have it, and I need to hurry and pick it up and spend AP points and blah, blah, blah. In this instance, it's probably not quite as critical, but I think it's really cool to have. Got a key. Yeah, again, this is pretty slow. We're moving through this pretty methodically, and maybe that's what they want, right? The ghouls themselves don't move quickly. In the first Fallout, they definitely didn't move quickly. In the second one, they normally wouldn't unless you had one as a companion like Lenny, and you got far enough away from him, and he would book it. He was fast. So I think that was kind of the intent with the earlier ghouls. They're a little bit more zombie-like in that sense, and something that has been changed since the later Fallouts. So maybe if they're slow and we're slow, it all kind of works. I don't know. Yep, that looks like that critical death animation. Yeah, ghoul was critically hit for 39 points, shattering into pieces. Oh, and that's it. Wow, that went by really fast. I really, really enjoyed this. So kind of my general thoughts about this are that I think it is extremely well done. They've paid really good attention to detail, incorporating all the elements that we kind of associate with the earlier Fallouts. My question is this just Necropolis? When this gets released, obviously they kind of had this in mind when they were initially making it. And since it's called Fallout Bakersfield, are they just making kind of this one level that we play through? What would that be like? I'm not quite sure. But I guess what is most impressive to me is that it just all works so well. Like, who would have known in 2025 that you could take a game from the 90s, you could take an aesthetic that was popularized from games in the 90s, mostly Doom, you could put them together in their own unique way, and it would look so great. I really am impressed by this project. I really hope that it is able to continue and we can get something that we can all play. And you know what? You never know what Bethesda or Microsoft or whoever's in charge and making the decisions might think of something like this. Could they look at something like this and say, hey, is this a way that we could bring earlier Fallouts to new people, to the newer generations? Because let's be really honest with ourselves, the early Fallouts are very much a product of their time. They are extremely mouse-centric. The buttons, they are small, and if you don't really know what you're doing, it can be really hard to navigate. In fact, there is quite a learning curve, especially if you are not familiar with games from this era. And I know there's a lot of people that want to give it a shot. They're younger, they haven't really played those types of games before, and they get too frustrated early on and they kind of give up. Me, as a Fallout fanatic, I pushed through the frustration of the early part of the learning curve and figuring out what everything does, figuring out just the small things, like, hey, you're going to need a rope for this one section. Did you know where to put it? No. Did you know how to equip it and make it happen? No. But after a while, you kind of understand how the game works and you start to get an idea of the types of things that it expects you to do, and it becomes very enjoyable after that. The story really sucks you in. I mean, every once in a while you get some critical miss and die in a terrible way, and that really sucks. But hey, that happens with any type of game, right? I've just tried to give a lot of thought to how we can bring the earlier Fallouts to newer generations. This seems like it could be a way. How do you make an entire Fallout game out of this? I don't know exactly, but everything I'm seeing here is kind of telling me that they've got a lot of it figured out. There might be some details that they need to adapt in a way that makes sense, but this looks like a video game. Especially since the first Fallouts, they were segmented. So you didn't have this giant overworld like in the later Fallouts where you would walk around. You would travel from area to area. There was an overworld map and you could get random encounters when between areas. But this type of approach could totally work. Now, what I'd be interested in is, I obviously see this and I think this is awesome. I think this is just so cool the way that they make it seem like a boomer shooter, but it's extremely, extremely Fallout. There's no doubt about that. I would be interested if you younger people see this and if this seems interesting to you, or if you see this and you're like, that looks ugly, that looks slow, that doesn't look fun. I think this looks great, but I was also born in the 90s. I'm 35 years old now, and so maybe I'm biased. I don't know. You'd have to tell me. All right, my camera kind of died there, but you got my audio, and that's what's important. Thank you for being here with my react and kind of my thoughts on this whole Bakersfield project. I think it's awesome. I really want to see more coming from this, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the subject. Now, before I leave, one thing behind me. Why isn't it on? There. All right, it's on. And it is simply a laptop, but not just a laptop. Okay, it's just a laptop, but it's running Linux. And I am a big fan of Linux. I'm not the best user, the most knowledgeable user, but I have a few Linux machines here, and maybe one day I'll talk about that, but I enjoy it. That's it. Hope you've enjoyed it. Rad out.